Greetings, friends around the world. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy channel. I want to talk about Jerusalem, Donald Trump, and prophecy. On December 6, 2017, Donald Trump made the world take note. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While many U.S. presidents had promised to do that, he actually did it. People in Iran, people in the Arab world, Palestinians are upset about this. But not only are they upset, there has been condemnation from the Germans, the French, the Dutch, and the Swedes. Matter of fact, the Swedish foreign minister said this was catastrophic. Now, as far as Jerusalem goes, it's called the City of Peace. But a lot of things that have been going around don't seem particularly peaceful. There have been thousands of people demonstrating. There was a fight from Gaza. Hamas has called for a third Intifada uprising against Israel. As far as Jerusalem itself, I want to go back to one of its mentions in the Bible. This is from 2 Samuel chapter 5. I want to just read verses 6 and 7. And the king, that's David, and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who spoke to David, saying, "You shall not come in here, but the blind and lame will repel you, thinking, David cannot come in here." Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David. So, Jerusalem has been associated with the Jews for a long, long period of time. Today is December 9th, 2017. It turns out that it was December 9th, 1917, that the Turks relinquished control of Jerusalem to the British. The old Worldwide Church of God had an evangelist by the name of Dr. Hay, and he calculated that from the time the Assyrians ended up with Jerusalem in 604 BC to the precise date, 2,520 years later, is when the Turks relinquished the control of Jerusalem to the British, and he felt that fulfilled various biblical prophecies. The Bible has some warnings and concerns about Jerusalem. One I'd like to read is from Zechariah chapter 12. I want to read the first 3 verses. This is from the New King James Version of the Bible. "The burden of the Lord against Israel. Thus says the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples, when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day, I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. Who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered around it." Well, Jerusalem is already considered to be a heavy burden by much of the world. Now, I mentioned Hamas's comments about Intifada against Israel because of this, and there have been fights and rockets and all those things going on. But the other part that I wanted to mention was the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, said that this effectively eliminates the United States from being a possible mediator in terms of a peace deal over in the Middle East. Donald Trump's actions mean the United States can no longer be trusted, and that perhaps the Palestinians and others are going to want the Europeans to broker such a deal? Perhaps. The Europeans have repeatedly expressed interest in doing so. And the Bible tells about a time of a deal that's going to happen in the Middle East. And that Europe is going to be involved in such a deal. Let me read Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 and 27. "And the people, the prince who is to come, shall destroy the city of the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of war, desolations are determined. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week." Let me just stop right there. You go throughout history, you find that the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary was the old Roman Empire. So this is talking about a European leader who's called a prince here, is going to confirm a deal. Prophecy watchers pretty much are in most of the agreement this is a 7-year deal. Now this deal gets broken in the middle of it, if we could continue on in Daniel 9:26. But this deal is basically considered to be a peace deal because of statements in Daniel 9:25 Daniel 11:23 through 24. And why that's important is a peace deal is going to be done, and there are going to be Europeans who are going to be involved in this particular deal. Now, some believe that the United States itself will still end up being a mediator, and Europe will only be a side part to this. And that may be. We'll see. Now, some have claimed that Donald Trump himself is a type of Cyrus, biblical Cyrus the Great. I'm going to read a couple of things regarding that and what's happened with Jerusalem lately. Lori Cardoza Moore, founder president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, wrote, "Christians recognize the Jews' biblical connection, the King David's establishment of Jerusalem as the capital of ancient Israel." And I read that passage just a moment ago. Then she says that various ones await the rebuilding of a third temple. President Donald Trump may implement one of the most biblically historic initiatives of his presidency by allowing the first step of the Jerusalem Embassy Act to go into effect. I've got another source. This is from Breaking Israel News. Says that Donald Trump's epic proclamation on Wednesday acknowledging Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the Jewish people was a major step towards establishing the third temple and bringing the Messianic era, said a number of Jewish activists. So we've got a lot of people doing that. Then they quoted here Assad Fried, who works for the United Temple Movement. You see, he compared Trump's role to that of Cyrus, the Persian king who entered the Babylonian exile. And he says that there have been amazing advances toward the temple this year, and it's clear that Trump was part of that process guided by God. And various ones have suggested that Donald Trump is a type of Cyrus. In Isaiah 44, verse 28, there's a prophecy about Cyrus. It says, "Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he shall perform all my measures, saying to Jerusalem, you shall be built, and to the temple, your foundation will be laid." Now there's more passages regarding Cyrus in the Bible, but those particular things were fulfilled in Ezra. Ezra 1 verses 1 through 9. I'm only going to read the first verse. "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. And the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. So he made a proclamation throughout the kingdoms and put it in writing, saying," and if you go through the passage here, it says to go back and rebuild the temple. Now there's centuries that separated those, so this is a biblical prophecy that came to pass. But does that mean that U.S. President Donald Trump is Cyrus? Well, not particularly. Cyrus was mentioned by name, and God said that he would rebuild the temple. Donald Trump is not mentioned by name, and Donald Trump himself is not going to build the temple. As far as the temple itself goes, I want to comment, some believe that a temple must be built in order for various prophecies to be fulfilled. But the reality is, in the New Testament, according to writings of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians and in Ephesians, it's Christians that are the temple of God in this age. For example, let me just read 1 Corinthians 3 verse 16. "Know ye not that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you?" We see the same basic thing in 1 Corinthians 16:9 and 2 Corinthians 6:16. So it's Christians that are the temple of God, the temple that God would recognize in this particular age. But what about sacrifices? The Bible talks about sacrifices. I cut off Daniel 9:27, and I want to read the rest of Daniel 9:27. It says, "But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even if the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate." This prince, after 3.5 years, is going to do something, and animal sacrifices are going to be stopped. You could also read about him, and he's called the king of the north in Daniel 11:31. It says, "And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortresses. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation." Various ones have said, okay, because the king of the north is going to do this, stop sacrifices, the Jews must have a third temple. While they may or may not do that, they actually have the ability to sacrifice now. When I was in Jerusalem, I spoke with somebody from the Temple Institute and I asked them, I said, you need a physical temple on the Temple Mount to build or to do sacrifice, or you can do it now? He says, we can do it now as soon as they give us permission. I also wrote the reconstituted Sanhedrin years back and said, hey, do you guys need a temple to do animal sacrifices, or you can do it without it? And they said, we can do it without it. Why? Because it's something the book of Ezra says. Ezra 3, verse 6. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord, but the foundation of the temple of the Lord was not yet laid. So the Bible shows that the Jews did do animal sacrifices without a temple, and that they can do them now. Now, because of the actions of Donald Trump, many in Europe and elsewhere are wanting to distance themselves from the United States. Over in Europe, they have plans, and their plans are to unite. Martin Schulz, who's the leader of the German SDP party, this week called for a United States of Europe by either 2023 or 2025, depending on which news report you look at. But basically, he and others have cried out that Europe needs to unite. They do not like actions that Donald Trump has taken. And the Bible does say that the Europeans are going to unite. And as far as Jerusalem goes, when I read Daniel 9:27, as well as Daniel 11:31, that's talking about a European leader who is going to go into Jerusalem. And that is what's going to happen. The Bible does say such things are going to come to pass. Contrary to the views of some that it can't happen because Donald Trump made some kind of a deal, an announcement, a peace deal is going to happen according to Daniel 9:26 and 9:27 and other prophecies of the Bible. When that does, we're going to have a countdown to the Great Tribulation. Now, because the year 2018 is 70 years from the official formation of the nation of Israel, some people believe that 2018 is the end. The Great Tribulation will start or be over or whatever. But because that deal in Daniel 9:27 that's going to be confirmed for a week or 7 years has not yet been made, contrary to what you may hear this in the next year or so, 2018 is not the end. We have to wait for that deal. Now, because of the actions of Donald Trump, we're seeing some people protesting. Now, of course, these people have protested before. The Palestinians have protested. There has been violence. And we may see an uprising, a major uprising, that will lead to some type of a war, which will then, therefore, result in a peace deal. We're not quite to the stage of having that peace deal yet, but the foundations are being laid. Jerusalem is mentioned in the Bible. Actions by Donald Trump, while I don't believe he's Cyrus from God, are helping to lead to that. Jesus told his people to watch world events, and we're seeing a lot of world events line up with properly understood biblical prophecies. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy Channel.